Hi, everybody. This is Matthew Poes with Audioholics, and I have a special guest. Now, you're like a legend. I have been hearing about you for so long. So why don't you introduce yourself and tell me what you do?
Okay. Hi, my name is Phil Jones. I am the Director of Global Brand Activation. So what does that mean? My job is to work with the engineers and the brand teams and the product teams when they develop new products, and then try to figure out the best way to explain new technologies, whether it's new surround sound formats, new speaker technologies, to people, to other enthusiasts like you guys out there.
And I think the legend part comes from, because every time I say to Gene De La Sala, I got a question about something that now Massimo, was Sound United before, makes. He says, oh, well, we got to talk to Phil. Phil knows the answer. We got to get Phil on the channel. He'll be able to talk to us. So you know like something about basically everything having to do with these products. I was impressed to learn you used to work for Sony actually before this and did a lot with their products too. So you've been around this industry in one form or another for quite a while. Mm-hmm. Now, we're actually here to talk about definitive technology specifically, and about a new speaker line that's coming out. So I think for the audience, I think most probably knows, but if you don't, definitive technology. So I don't know all the partners, but Sandy Gross, I know, was one of the partners who had helped found the company and was mastermind behind a lot of the design approaches. And something that he really pioneered was the use of bipolar speaker designs, which means essentially you've got the same sound radiating out the front and the back. And that gives a different sound signature. So you guys have maintained that. And in the new line, you've actually, in a sense, upgraded it because you've gone with a symmetric array. So you have two mid-bass drivers and an MTM between the tweeter in the middle, and you've done the same thing on the back, I believe on all the models. Is that correct?
Yeah. So you may be familiar with the older BP 9000 series. That had an array on the front and on the back, but that one was more, we called it forward focus. More energy came out of the front than the back. There was about 60 dB less coming out of the back. The goal was that reflective sound that was coming out of the back would give you a larger sense of spaciousness. It made the room seem bigger. So the best way I would say it is, depending on where you sit in a concert hall, the sound sounds a little different. So think of a regular direct rating speaker would be you sitting in the front row and really being able to. It's more, the imaging is more defined. The space seems smaller. But if you go like 9 rows back or halfway into that concert hall, whatever, there's a bigger sense of space there. Both experiences are different. Which one is best? The one that you like. So the forward focus gave you a larger sense of space in that room. The new model gives you the ability to do that traditional, the forward focus that we were doing with the BP 9000 series speakers, but also we harken back to our original fully bipolar capabilities too. So you could choose between the two on all of the new models.
Yeah, so basically there's a switch on, probably going to mess the model numbers up. So you've got the 40, the 60,
yeah, 40, 60,
and 70,
and
80. And the 40, 60, and 70 have a switch that allows you to take it down 6 decibels. The 80 is different. So that one actually has jumpers on the back. And that gives you more flexibility. So you can use it like a switch where you adjust the jumpers, you get the 6 dB reduction. But then you guys were showing us that you can actually bi-amp that if you want to. And then you can change the levels either with a little attenuator of some kind, or if your preamp processor actually has that capability built in, you could do it there, and you could get essentially continuously variable levels of rear radiation to affect that. And we got listening demos of these speakers. I think it's worth talking a little bit about what we heard. So the forward focused, when we heard that, to me, things like apparent source width, the image size, if you will, shrunk a little bit, became more focused, more defined, better delineated in a sense, but it wasn't as spacious. And then when you guys turned that switch the other way, what we heard was the opposite, basically. Everything got bigger and wider. And I think my reaction was exactly what you said. I don't think one is right and one is wrong. It seemed like this was more something to play with.
Exactly.
You might like one better than the other. Maybe you like a certain one better all the time. And maybe there's times where you like one better for certain music than others. I think you guys referred to it as like a tweaker's paradise.
Yeah, and that's the best thing about it. Because you may, like you said, you're doing a guitar solo or a simple piano one. You may have it set to forward focus, hit the switch. Then you're going to do some, now you're looking at who live at Leeds, and it's this big gigantic thing, you may want to switch it to bipolar. And we're talking, it takes a second to hit that switch. When you get into something like the bigger guy, like the DM80, the biamping, put a biamp it. Now you can determine, do I want 6 dB of back? Do I want 3 dB? Do I want 9 dB? It gives you the ability to adjust. And then you add the fact that we have intelligent bass and the subwoofers are powered. You can also not only tweak the dispersion pattern, and you can also attune the bass for your preferences.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so one of the other things that's been a hallmark of Definitive Technologies designs is that the towers for a while now, in like the BP series, now this new series, have had powered subwoofers basically built into them. And they have a pretty narrow aspect ratio. So the speakers are narrow on the front. They're deep, which is what gives them that. So it's 8, 10, and 12-inch subs basically built into them. The 40 is passive. So if somebody doesn't want or can't justify the powered one, they have the option to go to that. Now, when we looked at these, I think superficially they looked very similar to the old models. But there's a lot of changes under the hood. Actually, there's a ton of changes. You want to talk a little bit about that?
And that's one of the things, like we know, like we have like the sock that covers the entire speaker. So a lot of times it's hard to show all of the new pieces, but pretty much everything in the new Dymension is different than what was in the original BP 9000s that you saw that are in retail right now. For example, there's a new tweeter. It's a new with a new surround. It's a new material. It's instead of annealed aluminum, it's ceramic oxide. The BDS driver is new. The subwoofers are new. The crossover is new. The amplification is new. The dispersion pattern is new. The cabinetry is new. So pretty much, while it still kind of has that look and feel, every piece has been upgraded. Because if you're an engineer, after you make a product, you sit there and for 2 or 3 years, you're like, how can I, next time I do this, I'm going to do that. And now because they have the ability to redo the speaker, all those changes they've been thinking about for the last 2 or 3 years, they could do.
Well, and I think another thing that's happened is, of course, we had COVID in the midst of all of this. We ended up in lockdown. It caused a pretty bad supply chain problem. And so a lot of products, in fact, some of the other products you guys had, required redesign just to be able to keep parts flowing so those products could be made. Redesigning these, of course, gave you guys an opportunity in those part shortages to make sure the product can keep being produced. And I think one of the neat upgrades you did, I don't know for sure that it was tied to part shortages, but it's something that we've been hearing a lot about without seeing products follow, has been the GAN amplifiers. So the 80 actually has a totally new amplifier that you guys have developed in-house using this, I forget exactly what it stands for now, gallium,
I can't
something nitride. Gallium nitride, maybe that's what it is. It's a FET device.
Very compact, very efficient.
Yeah, you want to talk a little bit about the advantages?
Well, that's the main thing is you're trying to put subwoofers, amplification, high power into something that's incredibly compact, and you want reliability. And we all know that amplifier circuitry continues to advance. So around the corner here, we have engineers that work on the electronic side of this, and they helped develop a new GAN-FET amplification for this. And that was because they were looking for, they loved how compact and how efficient it was and how good, how nice it sounded. So this is one of the first systems that we have that are utilizing the GAN-FET, and I'm actually quite impressed with it. So you're looking at about 450 watts continuous for your subwoofer. So
5 minutes at least.
And for 5 minutes at least. So so it's not just, a burst. We're talking a pretty beefy amplifier. Now, a lot of times we look at the speaker, you're basically buying, if you buy something like a DM80, you're buying a definitive Descend 12-inch, and think of it as 2 pairs of bookshelves, one firing backwards, one firing forward. So there's a lot of components. And a lot of times when you see these speakers, because of the sock that's covering it, you don't see how much is in it. Like we actually have a piece over there, hopefully we'll put it in B-roll, where we pulled the sock off of a DM70, and it's pretty impressive what's inside the enclosure.
Yeah, actually, and speaking of the enclosure, so you guys have made a lot of changes. One of the things that was shown to us that I think is unique and maybe folks don't understand went into this was that cabinet resonance was a concern. So you guys were paying attention to all the little details. And many people will think, well, cabinet resonances, you add bracing, you add damping, but actually it can be hard sometimes to add enough bracing, especially because you've got a lot of drivers in here that need to be able to be there to deal with all of that. Damping doesn't always deal with all the problems effectively. So you actually used a quarter wave, kind of like an internal port almost. There's a quarter wave chamber that was tuned to one of the resonances of the cabinet, and it helped pull that down dramatically. Now, is that new to this series, or you've done this always?
Well, we have an engineering facility in Maryland. We call it ARAD, Acoustic Research and Development. So they have so a lot of things such as speaker designs, how they move, resonances of the cones, cabinet resonances. We have the ability to measure that. So they have been experimenting with this with other models, including something like a demand. And each time, and then they've discontinued to develop it more and more and more. And that's one of the things they did. And also things like the passive or bass radiators are different because dual suspension, they're weighted different because they're so close together. They're kind of butted against each other to actually reinforce the cabinet to help reduce any kind of vibration. So there's lots of ways that we're trying to do to minimize that so you hear the music, not the box.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. So I think the last thing to mention about this, we talked about the amplifier, but there's a lot of DSP in this as well. So you've got a bass control feature that allows you to dial the bass up and down. But it's not just a volume control. You guys are really clear to say this is not just a gain control. It doesn't just turn the bass up. You took advantage of the new DSP processing power. And as I understood it, you modified the shape of the response at each of the clicks. There's 30, is it 31, 32?
Exactly. So and that's a big thing. Like if you have a regular subwoofer and you just turn up the level, how it blends. So it's going to change. So you may have it say you have it crossed over at 80 hertz or 60 hertz, but as you change the level, that blend is going to be impacted. But so we know that as you go from click to click to click, how to blend that better between the mid-range, mid-bass and the subwoofer. So one of the demos we always do is we take kind of a male vocal and that's kind of low, or sometimes even a female voice that actually doesn't have a lot of bass, and I can go in and I can turn up the subwoofers and it won't affect the vocal range, because it's adjusting itself and changing that curve based on the output of the subwoofer. So you just get better blending. And that's one of the things. So we used to have an LFE on the back of the BP 9000s. We took that off. That LFE was there because people said we should have it because it's got powered subwoofers, but we would tell people never, never, never use that because we know best on how to blend that subwoofer with the mid-range. So the new unit does not have that. So we tell people if you don't have to have subwoofers with these powered towers. You just set your speakers to large and say you want to send the LFE to your mains, and then we'll make sure that when you're playing something musically, it's blended properly, and then the LFE you'll still get great bass because that LFE signal is just sent to the main channels anyway.
Sure. Well, and I think what you're getting at is sometimes in the design, you have to protect people from their own selves to make sure they get a good experience. And you guys put clearly a lot of effort into that. So as I mentioned, we heard these speakers. The bass on these is impressive. I mean, I get it that for instance, 80 has a 12-inch subwoofer. There's two of them. That's like 2 12 subs in the room. But the experience that we had, those were playing in a pretty large room. Yes, it actually is on the large size of what I would have thought to put a speaker like that into. And yet it filled that room with sound, no problem. The bass was more than enough. It was actually very impressive. We got a home theater demo, a surround demo. The surround demo had powered towers for all the surround channels and the left and right speakers as well. Also very impressive. Now, I think you've done this before, but I know they really wanted to reinforce it. The new top center channel has a powered subwoofer in it as well. It's an 8-inch subwoofer, correct? And that's certainly, I actually don't know of anybody else that's done that other than Definitive Technology. And so, when you get down to it, if you've got like a 9-channel system, it's all powered. That's a lot of subwoofers in one room that you've got being pulled together. And what was the rationale behind putting that 8-inch sub in that center channel?
Well, when you look at a center channel, a large amount of the information that you're listening to comes from the center. I've heard it can be up to like 70% of the information that happens in a movie comes from the center channel. So the more that center channel can do itself before you redirect frequencies to the subwoofers, the more locked in that center image is going to be on the screen. So being able to have an 8-inch subwoofer means I can run that. We still recommend you cross it over, but you can cross it over far lower than what you can 40, 50 hertz compared to what you can do with a normal speaker. So if you're watching a band and a person's playing a bass guitar, all of the frequency range, pretty much of the bass guitar, is going to come from the center channel. It's not going to be some of that be redirected to a subwoofer. Now, of course, they say bass is omnidirectional, but you can tell. You can just tell. You can still just kind of tell that it's not all coming from the center location. So having a full range center means more of the information comes from the center channel. Musical instruments are more focused. Basses, male voices are more focused. It really helps that. And since we make, power, we know how to put powered subwoofers into slim cabinets. We took that understanding and also did it with that. So that has the dual bass radiators. It has a powered subwoofer, all the things that you would see on our floor standard. Just basically think of it as a smaller tower laid on its side without the bipolar.
Sure. So last thing, actually, I'll ask you to grab it for me really quick, the topper here. So you've offered some version of this, I think, on the last generation as well, but you've updated it. And so this is for Atmos. And so you've actually offered more options this time. As I understand it, we've got the topper. It's available on the 80 and the 70. It doesn't fit on the others. And this one is a ceiling firing, a reflecting style.
Well, this is the one that actually fits on top of the speaker itself. So if you look here, there's a little jack connection on the front of the on the back of the unit. So what you can do is there's a little plate that's on the top of the larger the 80 and the 70. You pop the little plate off, this drops in. On the back of the speaker, of course, are 2 additional speaker terminals that when you drop this on top, then you connect it there. So you don't have ugly, unsightly wires hanging all the way through. So
yeah, it's a slick design, I have to say.
Yeah. And then we realized that sometimes people want to actually be able to mount something. So there's another one called I think this is the 9D. There is the DM95, and that is more of an angled height speaker that could be mounted on wall for someone who wants to mount a speaker higher on the wall.
And that, I think you guys were saying, that was basically a problem solver. So in a sense, this is too. People say, I don't want to cut holes in my ceiling to put the Atmos speakers in. Okay, so I think it was Dolby who had actually originally in the Atmos development process come up with the idea of reflecting off the ceiling to simplify it. The problem was that assumed a normal rectangular room with normal height ceilings that you could actually reflect off of. A lot of people don't have that capability. So you guys have now developed you said it was the 95, which we have pictures of that one. It's a wedge-shaped speaker that mounts on the sidewalls. And we got a demo of it. I have to say, I was impressed. I was skeptical that was going to work effectively, but it did. It worked very effectively at providing that overhead sort of immersive experience you expect from Atmos.
Exactly. So if you look at the receivers itself, so say you go out and you've heard it on the Denon receiver, and then you're going to hear it on the Marantz flagship model. The receiver asks you where your speaker is located. Do you have them in ceiling, or do you have a height speaker, or do you have it on the speaker itself? And once it knows that, it does a pretty good job of taking that object-based information, whether it's Dolby Atmos, DTSX, or even if you upmix something using something like Virtual X or something like that, of doing a really good job of placing that object in the right space. So right now we have it set. The receiver knows that those are located there and does a pretty good job of doing that. And it does raise the image substantially. And even when things fly over, you still get a good phantom image as it flies over your head.
It was actually very impressive. So like I said, I walked in a little bit skeptical. I've heard that before, not always had the best experience. What I heard in that room was absolutely an impressive, immersive experience. It was cohesive. One of the neat things about the demo, and I get that a lot of people probably are going to say, I don't know that I can do this, but a lot of times you've got little tiny surround speakers. They're timbre matched to some extent to the front speakers, but not really. And you get those pans around the room, and it's like you could tell there's this disjointed nature. In the demo you gave us, it was very seamless. Everything was panning around us, overhead and around in such a way that you didn't really notice the speakers. You just were sort of in the experience.
Well, that's one of the things that's always been of something that Definitive Technology has always tried to do. Application-based. So if you look at the DM90, it uses the same drivers that you would find in something like maybe a DM60. If you look at the 95, same thing, same tweeters, same BDS mid-bass drivers. So the cohesiveness is the same. As you spend more money or buy a larger speaker, either the driver size gets larger or you get more drivers. That's the best way to explain it. So the tonality between, as things blend from point A to point B, not going from a $200 quality a speaker that has inexpensive tweeters and mid-range into a high-end floor standard, so you don't get that disconnect. So it does a much better job of blending. And that also applies if you decide you maybe in the future you want to get in ceilings or something else. The blending is always going to be very, very good.
Well, the last thing I just want to mention is we've had a lot of conversations since we've been here. This isn't unique, I think, to Definitive Technology. I think the conversation was across the brands that Massimo has, but it was that at the end of the day, you guys are trying to provide people not with products. That's a means to an end, but to an experience. And there was a lot of discussion about giving people a meaningful experience that moves them. And I have to say, the demos you've given us while we're here, I think others that were here would agree, were moving demos. You know, we were sitting there and listening, and there was emotions in those performances that we were seeing that we all felt. And I think the greatest compliment to any audio product is when the emotions being conveyed in the movie or in the music is felt by you. You know, when you get goosebumps on your arms or you tear up a little bit, which is a normal reaction to something. But when the performance isn't that good, you don't get that. And we got that here. That was great.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I've always said. So like, what makes something hi-fi or what makes something to that point? When it pulls your heartstrings. Like, it's so funny. Like, we'll be setting up speaker systems and you'll play it and it sounds good, but it doesn't give you that little kind of, you don't have the feeling. And then when you get it right, you go, it's right. And it's not because the fact that the center image is more focused or there's more cohesiveness to the mix. It's just, you get the right, it starts pulling your heartstrings. And because that's what this is all about. Like, I'm a geek, you're a geek, Gene's a geek, and we like to know how things work. But a lot of people who come over, our friends, our family, they just want to be pulled into the experience. And that's what most customers are. They're more concerned with hearing Alicia Keys and making it feel like Alicia Keys is in their room. And you're getting all the emotion of her singing versus how many subwoofers and where they're placed and what format is being done.
Well, I got to say, too, if people are buying this equipment solely for, I don't know, the number of subwoofers or how it works or whatever, I feel like you're doing it wrong. Like, this hobby is not about the equipment. This hobby is about the experience. It's about a love of music, a love of movies. I've actually been very impressed with how passionate the Massimo folks that we've met are, the engineers, marketing folks, yourself. Everybody seems to be not just a geek, but actually passionate about music, passionate about movies. Yeah. So I think that's great. It means the products are being produced with passion too. Phil, I got to say, you did not disappoint. I understand why Gene talks about you so much. Yeah. I really appreciate your time on this. This has been a great experience. Thank you for inviting me out here and having us here for this demo. Do you have any parting words?
Yeah, well, like I said, it's always great to spend time talking to you and Gene and your viewers, because you guys, you guys and gals, it's all about, great audio video experiences. And anytime, you're welcome anytime. I love, and next time you want to go and geek out on some other technology, I love hanging out and talking about that stuff. So hopefully we can do more in the future.
Well, I'm absolutely sure we will. I heard maybe there's some invites to Japan. Probably not really. So anyway, yeah, hopefully we have more tours of some of your facilities and definitely have you on our channel some more to talk about and geek out on some of these products. You have so many new things coming out that I think we could delve into. There's so many new features on the receivers and on the processors, so much going on with these speakers. So yeah, I think this is exciting. Certainly we'll bring you out again for that. So I think that's enough. I think people are probably like, wow, that was a long interview on Definitive Technology, but there is a lot to cover here. So I want to thank everybody for watching this. And until next time, keep listening.
Take care.